You want to do the honors?
I have a tagline for you. Why don't you give us yours? You have never so far, so go for it.
All right, here we go. Don't put too much expectation on this. All right, let me see if can get this right here. Welcome to the Below the Surface podcast, the podcast that has triggered a duty to report offsite movement of expertise.
I have to think about it if I think this is good or bad. I don't know. That has triggered a duty to report. Keep going.
Offsite movement of expertise.
Offsite movement of expertise. Now, yes, I get it. Very good.
That's a slow burn, that one.
Well, no, that's me. It's like, no, nice.
Soon enough, I think we'll have hopefully we'll have fans writing in. They might have little requests or suggestions for these taglines.
Of proper taglines.
Just other ones, I think. I think we might start a bit of a trend.
What trend would that be?
Or like maybe a secret club.
Yeah.
BTS listeners.
So I don't know if this is gonna go out after the electric vehicle one. But I promised you I would tell you another Gunnarish story.
You said something about postnatal classes?
Prenatal
classes. Yes.
So, come on, you just had a bunch of children.
I've been there. Yeah, I've been there.
When I started having children in the early 2000s, what happens is that, when in month 9, you get invited to the hospital where you're about to deliver.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they give you classes on how to handle this child that is about to arrive. So, I went all along, and then Louise was all excited, and we go to the North Shore Hospital, and so oh gosh, people are gonna. So we are in this prenatal class.
This is going to incriminate you, Gunnar.
Right. So you need to picture this. So there's I don't know, we were about 10 couples with highly pregnant women.
Yeah.
And we are in this room, and we are being prepared for the events that are about to happen.
Yeah. And sorry, Gunnar, this is your first daughter, yeah?
My first daughter, yeah.
Okay. So that's a stressful time when it's your first child. If this is all very new and can be overwhelming, right?
Yeah. It's like I just did not know what was about to happen.
Yeah.
And so we go to these prenatal classes. The lady giving the class was the female equivalent of the skydiving instructor. She was nice enough, so she wasn't wearing any Ray-Bans, but she was there, and also there's 10 couples, out of which and I'm gonna have so much hate mail. Out of those 10 men that are there, I would strongly argue that at least 7 don't want to be there. That 9 of them pretend they enjoy being there. And then there is this one dude, in this case me, who is not so excited about being there and who doesn't mind showing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, anyhow, here it is. And it all starts off with the lady saying, births are associated with a lot of pain, and our society has a negative connotation with pain. And I'm already sitting there like, no shit. There's a good reason. Yes, there's nothing wrong with society. That's just evolution telling you, you hold your finger into the fire. You know what? Don't do that, because and the way how I teach you about this is pain. It's generally a good thing that there is pain, right? And it's a good thing that it has a negative connotation. So she didn't want to hear any about this. She said, our society always associates pain with negative things. But when it comes to the childbirth, right, there's a lot of positive things. And then she proceeds to go to the whiteboard and write down what are the usual things that we associate pain, and what is different on the right-hand side with pain at birth. So on the left-hand side, everybody was easy. What do we associate pain with? Well, accidents and broken limbs and cutting fingers and whatever, right? So all the negative things. Well, very good, she says, right? Now, can someone tell me what is different about pain during childbirth? And at that stage, because I was already really not enjoying this, right? So I'm like, I jump up. Me. I can tell you what's different, right? So, oh, yes, sir. I say, it hurts way more than any other pain.
I thought that would have gotten you some cred with that audience.
So here it is. Louise just rolled her eyes. She knows me. This is Gunnarish behavior. And then, all right. What was, however, right? So all these people start not staring at me. They start staring at Louise.
Yeah.
They think like, oh, you poor little thing.
Uh-huh.
How can we help you with this guy? Right?
Oh man.
And I saw the change in the face of the nurse.
Yeah.
And she was good. She recovered fairly quickly. Not exactly what I wanted to hear, she says.
Yeah.
And I went, okay. Well, what's different? And then maybe we should focus on the positives and blah 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 blah. I must, however, say she was very good because she totally got me back 20 minutes later. 20 minutes later, out come the little dolls where you learn how to put nappies on.
Uh-huh.
Right. So look, this is how you do it. And so look, do I have any volunteers? Oh yes, you, sir.
Randomly selected from the crowd, yeah.
Straight at me. He's like, why don't you come out and show us how it's done? And I'm like, okay, I'm okay. I was already halfway up when I heard I need a volunteer. I knew she was gonna get me. So it was all good. Afterwards, you kind of mingle a little bit, and I was able to show that I'm not a terrible monster.
No. I know what you mean. Those kinds of environments. I mean, they can get so serious, and it's like it is a serious situation, but it's like anything to do with children, especially and birth, and it's like there's so much intensity in a lot of people, and so much really strong opinions about stuff. You know what I mean? Just about things that are so subjective.
I know, and look, in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the world's greatest. I mean, I would never take my skydiving comment back. That was just too good.
Yeah.
But this one with a bunch of highly pregnant women who are also scared and husbands who are in the same boat as I am, just don't dare to say it. Maybe it was just Gunnarish. You can't. What can I say? I mean,
He's just having a bit of fun.
The thing, yes. But it wasn't the place. And
fair enough.
The one who suffered, as so often with my behavior, was, of course, Louise. She, however, she's okay.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. So yeah, this might become a fixture, right? Your Gunnarish stories. You have to sprinkle them liberally throughout our podcasts.
So I have to categorically state, to our younger audiences, do not skip those classes.
No.
Just because you don't want to go doesn't mean you don't need to be there. You really, really do. Just don't tell everybody that it's going to hurt more than anything else. That wasn't... This is so long ago for me. And then, you enter this phase that you are in right now. Yeah. That in 20 years, I can promise you, you will hardly remember anything because you're in a constant state of jet lag for the next couple of years.
Yep.
We have one of those Google Home picture frames running in the kitchen, and I had a digital camera very, very early on, so tens of thousands of digital photos, and they play all the time, and we just love watching at them. But so often I see photos, I'm like, really?
When was that?
When was that? Where was that? What the heck? I mean, I must have taken that picture, or I'm even in it, right? And I'm thinking that is that's weird. I could have sworn I wasn't there.
I know what you mean.
It's not because it's so long ago. Yeah. But it's because of the lack of sleep you have.
Yeah, it's your mental state. I often say that the days feel long, but the weeks feel short. So yeah, we've got a bit of housekeeping to get through first, Gunnar. I edited my first pod recently, and I noticed how many ums I say and how many filler words I use. And you also informed me that I make a lot of mouth sounds, which I wasn't aware of. I didn't know I was going for like the ASMR angle on this podcast, but it turns out that I am. So any of our listeners, if you're into that, you're welcome. But yeah, it was crazy. I did the edit, and I was like, I didn't realize just how much filler I was using.
Yeah, the ums and ahs in our recordings from us and our guests are quite amazing.
I'm hoping there's less editing for you in the future because I'm trying to be more aware of it.
It's all good, right?
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
So the next one was some feedback that we got from one of our friends at the EPA, which was a very nice email that we received, and we really appreciate it. And we're not going to name who it is. We had a little bit of back and forth with this person, and they gave us some really interesting points. So they made a comment about the pod itself, and just their description of it was that it was a balanced perspective on the policies and guidelines that impact the broader industry on a day-to-day basis. And they said that, talking about the dynamic between us, which I found quite interesting, my measured and diplomatic approach blends well with your tongue-in-cheek humor, and it makes for a lighthearted and entertaining podcast. I thought that was a very nice comment.
When I read this email, it just really, really felt great.
Yeah.
It was so well worded because it hit the nail so on the head of what we are trying to achieve. We're trying so hard not to be as entertaining, which is so tough in our industry with our and dry subjects.
Yeah.
Entertaining, but also informing. And the banter that we have is quite deliberate. There's usually nothing scripted about it. It just comes out, and this is just the way how we are. And when it comes across like that, and that people enjoy it, gosh, that was great. Great to read.
Totally. There's another point that this person made in their email to us was that, in their opinion, the EPA won't judge me for introducing myself as James Hammond in meetings. And I'm very proud to say I actually did this the other day, not on purpose. I introduced myself to a site auditor who I won't name, but you know who you are, I think, because I introduced myself, not really planning it to come out this way, but I introduced myself as James Hammond. And I think he was a little bit wrong-footed. I think I felt the power shift a little bit in my favor. So I think it worked. I felt it.
A power move.
Yeah. The balance of the force kind of tipped a little bit in my favor. I think it gave me the edge in the meeting. So I might use that a bit more.
We started the podcast in February, right? It's now...
We did.
It's October.
Yeah.
Episode 18 has just gone out, and it just feels so long ago when we did the James Hammond. That was a good one, though. Loved it.
That was. And the last point that we had in this email, this officer wanted to correct what we said about penalty notices. I think it was probably me, described them as on-the-spot fines. And this officer just wanted to clear up that the EPA certainly doesn't view penalty notices as on-the-spot fines. They explained that, it's certainly not something that the EPA takes lightly. We've acknowledged this many times. The EPA has a difficult task to balance expectations of the community and of the ministers and what have you to have teeth and to be a kind of a tough cop on the beat versus, industry and other expectations for fairness and proportionality and patience and that sort of thing. So I think it was a really fair comment. So the use of the term on the spot fine, I think is a little bit misleading. No EPA officer is going to come to site and issue a $30,000 penalty notice on the spot. There is a lengthy process that goes into that decision. So we really appreciate that clarification. And you had something here that you wanted to talk about as well for housekeeping, I think.
The EPA has clarified a few things. They have basically withdrawn the 2022 position paper on the remediation of asbestos. So one of the conundrums, and we have spoken about this a long time ago already, was that asbestos is somehow treated differently to other contaminants. And one of the things that you were categorically not allowed to do was to remediate asbestos contaminated soil, and I'm talking bonded asbestos fragments. You were not allowed to pick out asbestos fragments out of a soil on site and leave that soil on the site. Okay, there may be different reasons. Again, that is not, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense if you take that stand, because yes, there is a clause in the POI, whichever POEO, whatever it is.
Waste regs, I think. Yeah, the one that says you can't recycle asbestos.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the two.
The EPA considered that recycling.
Yeah.
And that's not allowed. Recycling of asbestos waste, that's not allowed. And even if it stays on site, that was not allowed. Big outcry since 2022 in our industry. The industry heavyweights, ALGA and EIA&Z, under the leadership of a lot of great people. But Ian Gregson, one of them, said, "Guys, can we revisit, please? Can we look at that and say, hey, if I have I'm on site, I have a stockpile, and there is a few fragments of bonded asbestos in it. Why can't we just use the existing guideline levels that we have for assessment of asbestos in soil?
Yeah.
Reduce the level of asbestos concentration in that soil to below the threshold level, which is safe, and leave it on site. Why can't we do that?" And in the 2022 position paper, the EPA said, no, you can't do that. Then there's a draft one that came out in 2023, I think, but that was never ratified. Now a new one, actually no new position paper has come out, but the EPA has redacted the 2022 position paper. And if I read this correctly, and I put the link to that in the show notes, but if I interpret that correctly, it basically means from now on, we can actually remediate bonded asbestos contaminated material on a site with all sorts of protocols involved, but by taking the bonded asbestos fragments out and leaving the soil on site. Don't you dare and take it away. That's a different ball game. But if you leave it on site. Yeah. And I think this is spectacularly good news. If my interpretation is correct, and this is the proviso, I haven't 100% nailed that down, but that is really good news. Yeah. Here is something, EPA, I know the correct people are listening. You know, in an early podcast, how we said, please make updates easier to find for consultants. Yeah. And Tony Chappell, the CEO, was very quick and announced that they have changed their website. There's an updates website where all the updates get posted quickly and easily and for someone to find. Yeah. That would be an update that needs to go on your updates website. And it didn't. Yeah, I agree. It didn't go up there. So please, you have the website. Please put it on there. When you have an announcement like this, you can't rely on people posting it on social media. Yeah, I mean, and this is it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? This new webpage that the EPA has, and it's great. The flip side of it is that if people know about it now, they will see it as a single point of truth. And if something happens and it's not on there, then somebody will say, well, how was I supposed to know about it? So a bit of a double-edged sword, I think. But yeah, this is definitely something that needs to go on there. Okay. Now, that was housekeeping. Yes, that's that. So the topic for today that I want to talk about is this concept of a loophole. The reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's a word that can get thrown around a fair bit. I want to understand what a loophole is, what our understanding of it is, and kind of what's the difference between a loophole and exploiting a loophole versus just sort of doing something clever and innovative that may be in a gray area, but doesn't have the same sort of negative connotations as a loophole. So, this came up in my thoughts from a place where I pride myself on doing things a little bit differently and always looking at things a bit outside the box, which is a bit of a cliche, but there are a few things that we do where I think that, I know that we are operating in gray areas, but I think that we always do it with a good intention and the right intentions. And so give me an example, one of your loopholes. The word loophole, I mean, it has a lot of negative connotations about it. And for me personally, where I draw the line is, I think it really comes down to the intention of what you're doing. So if, for example, you're trying to, I would say, get away with something or weasel out of something that you should really be doing, that to me, the intention of that is to try and get away with something, versus another example where you might be operating in a gray area, but the intent of what you're doing is aligned with whatever framework you're working under. Does that make any sense? Yeah, sort of. Actually, no. But
Well, why don't we talk about a couple of examples and maybe we can tease out like what the difference is, I guess. I think innovation and pushing the boundaries of what we can do and, in a positive way carries with it a need to feel comfortable working in gray areas.
Mm.
And I think in order to work in gray areas, we need to have a clear understanding in our own head about like, how do we differentiate between something that's kind of trying to take advantage of a gap in the system versus cleverly working with a gap, but in line with the intentions of the framework you're on.
Yeah,
so,
okay, I get it.
Let me just talk about a couple of examples and we can say, where we think they sit. So the first one I wanted to talk about was that nerds like us read the New South Wales EPA site auditor meetings. And in one of the meeting minutes, I think it was March 2024, I think it was, they were discussing limits of reporting, and specifically in relation to PFAS. What it was that, there was some directive that was put out there that basically said that, if PFAS is below the limit of detection or limit of reporting from a laboratory, then you're all good. I think it was in relation to waste or something like that. So as we know, different laboratories have different levels or limits of reporting. Some are higher, some are lower. The example that was being discussed was consultants consciously selecting a laboratory that had a higher limit of reporting. What's your take on that?
Of course. Come on. That's the... Sorry. Maybe I should think about this first. That reminds me of the definition of sulfidic ores in the VENM.
Yeah, explain that one to me, Gunnar.
So the definition of VENM, you can look it up on the New South Wales EPA VENM, virgin excavated natural material, basically anything that is exactly what it says. Virgin excavated natural material, anything that is quarried, comes from deep down, has never seen the day of light, has not been in contact or has been contaminated by anything.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, right? So the definition of that includes that it must not contain sulfidic ores. In other words, acid sulfate soil. I get it.
Yeah.
We are gonna have a whole series of episodes on acid sulfate soils. But in March last year, the EPA clarified and said, what does that mean that they are not supposed to contain any sulfidic ores? And the clarification came and said that if there's any chance or any probability of acid sulfate soils being present, you must run the material through a chromium suite. That's the way how we analyze for there to be acid sulfate soils. And any other contaminant you don't have to test for in the VENM definition. All you have to do is you have to be a competent person and you have to say you can visually assess it. So suddenly it slips in that we need to run a test on it. Fine. The problem with it was that the test said you must have no detection on this chromium suite analysis.
Yeah.
And that is actually really tough because the chromium suite gives us 3 different acidities. I'm not going to get into this. And it's really hard to find material that has 0, like none.
Yes.
And I read this. I'm like, oh, guys, come on, guys. This is just factually really wrong.
Yeah.
Whoever put this together had their heart in the right place, but technically just wrong.
Yeah.
Geez. So I instantly thought, all right, in this case, I now need to call around. Where's the lab with the highest detection limits? Immediately.
Yeah.
And that, I think, takes us into the area of, is this trying to avoid something, or is it, do I have my heart at the right spot by using that as a loophole?
Yeah.
I guess the jury is out on this. But I must say that I know that the EPA is working on rewording that and has called for comments.
And it seemed to me that in the auditor minutes that the EPA, basically the outcome of that discussion was that, I think from memory, the EPA intended to approach laboratories and try and get some kind of a standardization or consistency, or to tweak the wording so that it specified basically the lowest limit of reporting that was available along those lines. And this is the thing, it's not to say that I necessarily agree with that position. It's just, I guess, the notion of shopping around, call it, to get a laboratory that has a more favorable limit of reporting that might result, say your limit of reporting is 5 micrograms at one laboratory and 2 at another, you might get a result of 3, which technically is above detection for one laboratory, but below for another. The idea of shopping around to get the better outcome. This is a lot like ethical stuff. I think we're going to find that we don't know where these things land sometimes, and it's not necessarily to say that it's a wrong thing. I think, do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I don't.
Nothing necessarily is wrong with doing it. It's just, for me, I look at it and I'm like, oh, is it in the intention of what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I don't know. If someone gives a directive that it has to be below a detection limit, that's the first problem. You can't.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So you're begging for someone to, because ultimately, okay, yeah, we are all about the environment, but ultimately, imagine you go to a certain lab that has detection limit of 2.
Yeah.
And you have a hit at 3, and there are other labs that wouldn't even report that. Imagine your client figures that one out.
Yep.
Comes to you and says, buddy, you just cost me a truckload of money.
Yeah.
By going to what they consider the wrong lab.
Yep.
How are you going to answer that?
It's a totally fair criticism. I don't know. I couldn't answer that question. Like, what's my justification for doing that? Would it have been legal for me to go to the lab with the higher limit of reporting and use them? Yeah, it would have. So what's my answer?
Some would argue not only legal, but you had an...
Yeah, well, I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Maybe you had an obligation. Anyway, you can see.
Yeah.
We're not going to solve this, but that's a loophole. With the VENM, I would say that is totally legit because I'm trying to bypass a mistake that was made.
Yes.
A factual mistake.
Yeah.
I think this is fair, totally fair game.
Yes.
What it is with the PFAS one, that's a toughie because ultimately these guidelines, especially with PFAS, they are still evolving and they change all the time.
That's it.
And the jury is not out on this substance yet.
I think you just came up with the name of this game, Gunnar. Loophole or legit.
You have another one here in the notes.
Yeah, so let me explain this one. This is more a planning matter. So anyone who's kind of into planning will sort of get this. For anyone else, this might be a bit of, might not make a whole lot of sense, but let me just try and explain it. So in New South Wales, there's what's called a complying development pathway, which is essentially an approval pathway that means you don't have to get approval from council. The approval can be done by a private certifier, so you can avoid council altogether. And it's generally reserved for pretty straightforward types of development that are pretty low risk, low impact, that sort of thing. I've come up with an approach of using compliant development to get approval for certain small scale, generally more like innovative kind of different waste activities, waste and recycling activities.
Okay, I can already see by the amount of lip smacking and ums and ahs, you're not 100% happy with your own approach here, right? You're already kind of...
I'm not happy with my own description of it. I feel like I'm not doing it justice, but what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, effectively we're talking about small scale, innovative kind of waste processing technologies, but there is a legitimate pathway for those to be approved through compliant development by being categorized as an industry activity, an industrial activity, or a reprocessing activity rather than a waste activity. And I won't go into all the boring details of that, but effectively a waste facility cannot be approved by compliant development. Simple as that. So what this is, without giving all the IP away, is that this is all backed by legal advice, I might add, that certain types of recycling facilities, small scale, low impact, can be approved in this way. And I don't know, people are going to have their own opinions on this, but some would see it as a bending of the rules. But I see it as, it is working in a grey area. However, it's backed by legal advice. And what's the intention of what I'm doing? The intention of what I'm doing, for starters, is I'm trying to help new innovative technologies to address recycling and the waste crisis that we're in get off the ground and get a foot in the market so that they can then go through and get a larger approval down the track. And the intention of the compliant development pathway is to facilitate low impact developments, to streamline them and get them out of council's hands, to also avoid burden on councils. So this is kind of these are the intentions of the frameworks that we're operating under. And for me, my assessment of this is that it fits within those intentions, right? But I can understand if someone else had a different view.
That's how you justify it to yourself.
That's how I sleep at night. No, I truly believe that. Like, I don't, you know me well enough, Gunnar. Like, I am someone with a lot of conviction, and I honestly believe that is okay, and that is legit.
Yeah, look, I don't know much about this area of your expertise there, but okay, I can't comment, good or bad. I would say this is part of the game we are all. Jesus, I'm gonna get in so much trouble. Being a good environmental consultant has a lot to do with helping people through the jungle of regulation.
Yep.
And not sticking to exactly to the letter of that one, but finding another letter in another legislation. It has all about to do with this. We're all playing a chess game here.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's, if it's justifiable and, like scientifically and, and ethically justifiable, and also like, why not?
Well, scientifically and ethically, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Gosh, it gets us into yet another one, oh my God, if I think something is not ethical, but it's perfectly legal, would I do it? But that's
a whole other thing, isn't it?
A whole.
What is legal is not necessarily ethical, is it?
Yeah, and I come across these kind of questions a lot. We've discussed it in, what was it called? The Honest Truth. We've discussed a little bit of that already. But there's a loophole. If you want to have my blessing, go for it. That's my blessing.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think that where consultants should add value by knowing where and when to push the boundaries, because the alternative is ultra conservatism, which doesn't help anybody.
Oh, it helps big consultancy firms who are run by legal teams. It helps them.
That's true. It helps the bottom line probably in those places, but doesn't do much more than that. But let me give you another one that might be a bit more straightforward. So there was a company that I'm aware of where, not a client of ours, where who operate a site that had an EPL on it, and they had monitoring requirements.
EPL, Environmental Protection License?
Environment Protection License, yeah. So a license regulated by the EPA, which had monitoring requirements on it. And they went through a period where they would get monitoring reports prepared by consultants, but it would only have those monitoring reports issued in draft form, so that if there were any exceedances of their license limits, they could refuse to endorse that draft, so that document was never finalized, and they would repeat the monitoring.
Okay, that's a no. That's a no.
That's a no. Yeah, that's a pretty clear no. I think that, it's one of these things where that's pretty straightforward, even though it doesn't say anywhere necessarily that you can't do that I'm aware of. I think that's a pretty straight one, isn't it?
No, not even me. I mean, even me. I mean, there's no way.
I thought that was a nice, simple one.
It doesn't even come close. We've had it, people asking us to do similar things. Hey, here's another classic. Let me take you back to the beginning of our podcast, where we were talking about mulchgate, right? The asbestos in mulch. And as part of that, suddenly people started looking into this industry, and they found out, hey, hang on a second. In this waste industry, there's a lot of people who run samples, who take samples in accordance with all the guidelines. Mm-hmm. And when there is a result they don't like, they just rerun that same sample again. And because there is these contaminants are not uniquely distributed, are not uniformly distributed in the soil matrix, and hence in your sample jar. If you take another sample out of that jar, you can get a totally different result. And you can do that over and over until you run out of sample jar, considering that the jar is somewhere between 200 and 400 grams, and you only need 5. You can see that you can run your test several times. And the moment you hit one that is below your guideline level, you report that one officially. Mm-hmm. It's done all the time we know that it is done, that is absolutely a no-no. Never, ever would I do that.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
I will rerun samples, and that's another podcast that we have to do.
That's its own pod that we will do, yeah.
And I will rerun them 4, 5, 6 times, but I will never ignore or hold back a result.
Yeah.
I will, and no one should ever pick and choose a result out of these reruns and ignore the others, be it the highest or the lowest.
We've seen both examples. We've seen obviously the word that the EPA used in all the commentary around this issue that you just described was retesting. They refer to it as retesting. That's what the media referred to it as, and most of that was focused on like getting a number of results for the same sample and then selecting the lowest one because that was the one that was below the limit. We've also seen many cases where, particularly consultants, select the highest one out of a set of results for a single sample, which is also not right.
Not right. It's wrong. It's wrong for the same reason.
Yeah.
You cannot withhold lab results. Full stop.
Full stop.
You cannot pick and choose out of any set of results that you have engaged in a project.
Yeah.
Basic science. And I hear it all the time from people, and they say, oh, we want to be conservative and we take the highest one. Guys, there is so much wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot wrong with that, and that will be a separate podcast.
That's it. And I think that, that's a really good example. And we don't need to get into it all now, but like effectively what we just said there, Gunnar, is that when it comes to retesting or rerunning samples, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. That's really what we're saying. Like a sort of a correct and justifiable way of doing it versus non-justifiable. And if we would use our terminology, like one is kind of exploiting a loophole and doing it the wrong way, and one is legitimate because we can scientifically justify it.
Yes.
Even though it's not articulated anywhere at the moment that you can or can't rerun a sample. So we're operating in a gray area by choosing to do that, but we can justify it scientifically as to why that's okay.
Yeah, we've had some seriously good discussions with the EPA about this, and in particular with the waste unit. Very, very interesting and highly sophisticated discussions with some seriously informed people there.
For sure.
And it's going to be a podcast for sure, but
it will.
Rerunning.
Yeah.
Never ever ignore what you have done and don't report on it. That's all I can say. That's a good one. Good one.
That's basically all I've got, Gunnar.
I have another couple of little ones here that I have.
Tell me.
Here's a loophole. Councils use it, I think, a lot. I don't know if it's a loophole or so, but you're acting on behalf of a client and you're trying to get some DA through, and it gets delayed and gets delayed and gets delayed, and you are going forth and back with council, and you're starting to feel that council is getting upset with your stupid facts, right? You come back and you just have the arguments, but you can see that council really doesn't want to hear them. Then the arguments that come back get thinner and thinner, and right at the end, when it's all done and dusted, and like, hey, this is it, they say, okay, in that case, I want an auditor. Yeah, I don't know if this is a loophole but it's a trend that I have seen, which I would argue is a loophole of councils not taking responsibility for their own decisions. Then they say, okay, I've heard the arguments by these experts, and I still don't like it, but he's pushing me too much into out of my comfort zone. And then right at the end, they throw an auditor at you. Expensive, unpleasant for everybody involved. I don't like that. Don't know if it's a loophole or not, but
I mean, you could see it as that way. I mean, is it the intention of the auditor guidelines and the auditor framework to bring in an auditor at such a late stage on a project as a bit of a gotcha card?
It's
in a situation where you're about to lose an argument. Exactly. I would argue that's a loophole that's it's being exploited by councils, because it doesn't feel like it's along the lines of what the auditor scheme is meant to be used for.
Totally agree. Another little one, VENM certificate, again, virgin excavated natural material certificates can be issued by anyone.
Yeah.
They don't require any sampling. Forget about the acid sulfate soil we spoke about before. But generally, you can issue a VENM certificate for virgin excavated natural material. And that's it. You don't have to do any sampling. You don't have to do anything. Basically, be a competent person. It's not even defined who is competent in this case. And anyone can issue a VENM certificate. Now, that has been abused with no end in our industry.
Yep.
And that has caused an unbelievable amount of hardship to a lot of people who have fallen for, and they had permission to import VENM. They have cited VENM certificates that were presented to them.
Yep.
And then what landed on their land was everything else but VENM. That is a loophole that is being exploited by the other side. So by waste transporters or by providers of clean fill. I know that material doesn't exist anymore. I would maybe the definition and who can issue a VENM certificate needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it has the capacity to be used in the right way where, the intention is that it's a streamlined thing where someone qualified can make a quick assessment of something and it's genuinely VENM and do it quickly. But obviously it's been misused in a lot of cases. So I think that's one that can go either way, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. How do I explain this now? So when we analyze for petroleum hydrocarbons are some of the most ubiquitous contaminants we assess for. I don't even know when, but it's sometime with the NEPM, with the National Environmental Protection Measure, the term TPR, total petroleum hydrocarbons, got replaced with TRH, total recoverable hydrocarbons. And although there is most of the time not a heck of a lot of difference between them, but when you throw a sample into a gas chromatograph or whatever people are using, it gives you basically the total recoverable hydrocarbons. Okay, some of those hydrocarbons are naturally occurring. So when you manage to get some tree bark or some eucalypt leaves into your sample, or mulch that has had some of this in it, and it also has proper petroleum hydrocarbon contamination in it, what you get is the petroleum hydrocarbons and the natural occurring ones in the normal analysis. And the labs are not stupid. They have developed methods of separating those two out. It's called a silica gel cleanup. Now, I have seen it over and over again that the silica gel cleanup gets abused. 3,000, 5,000 cubic meter stockpile on a service station from a tank farm. Okay. This is just an example. And the TRH, so the total recoverable hydrocarbons, exceed a certain threshold level. And consultants take the samples and take one of them out and say, all right, run a silica gel cleanup on this one. So tell me basically how much of this really is petroleum hydrocarbons and how much of it is something else. Now, very often, the silica gel cleanup gives you a significantly lower petroleum hydrocarbon result.
Yes.
And that's in theory all nice and good if those methods were error-free. They're not. So when you are a consultant and you have a stockpile that comes out of a tank pit or a service station, clearly where your contaminant is actual petroleum hydrocarbons. Right? What you do when you then run a silica gel cleanup on them and it comes back lower, you are abusing or you are trying to abuse the method, the errors in the methodologies. And then what's even worse is that you take that one result and you say, okay, in that one result, my contaminant fell from 8,000 to 6,000, or make it easier, from 8,000 to 4,000. So I now divide all other my results by 2. That is just so wrong. First of all, don't run a silica cleanup silica gel cleanup
on a tank
when you're on a service station.
Sample.
Okay,
Yeah.
how many eucalypt leaves can you have possibly gotten into a stupid sample jar? Okay, that's for starters. And secondly, then you run them on one sample and you extrapolate that to all the others, which may or may not have had any of your leaf or organic material in it.
Yes,
it's done all the time. It's done as a basically a complete and immediate fallback the moment you have a problem at a service station.
Yeah.
And guys, that is not right. That is wrong on so many levels. Okay, it's technically wrong, scientifically wrong, and definitely ethically wrong. So
and not something that is necessarily specifically prohibited by the relevant guidelines. I'm not familiar.
It's not prohibited at all.
It's not.
In fact, the service station guidelines even encourage it. No. They don't encourage that behavior, but they encourage it where they say, look, total recoverable hydrocarbons may contain some organic ones, and some natural ones.
But like you got to think of it. You're right. You got to think of the context of the sample you've taken. I mean, if you're taking it from bedding sand around a tank 3 meters down, like where are the organic hydrocarbons coming from?
Yes, right. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's totally
and extrapolating one to 40 other samples is just
that's crazy,
guys. That's I've seen it. But that's done by there's consultants specializing, and I used to be a lot in the service station industry. And you learn to deal with. You become an expert in all this, and look. I can understand it because, of course, the oil companies have caught on to this, and then if you don't do it, they would immediately question you. What the hell? Have you done a silica gel cleanup? No, why not? And you will say that's not right, and they say, really?
See you later.
Get out of here, right?
Yeah. Yes. And there we are. There we come on one of the practical problems with all this sort of stuff. I think where we've landed, and I think where I've come to from thinking all of this is like, if you're ever unsure about this kind of thing and you want to sort of check yourself, I'd be saying, well, like what's the intention of the sort of the framework or the thing that I'm working under? Like, what are we trying to, what is that trying to achieve? And, the decision that I'm making, is it aligned with that intention or not?
Takes us back to the ethics, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
How important it is to be an ethical consultant. A good one.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, that's really it. I don't know that there's any, I hope people have sort of taken something away from this, but this was just, I think, a nice thing to just kind of talk through, I guess, kick it around. So I hope people have enjoyed listening.
That's about it. I'll let you go. I'm surprised you kept talking to me after I explained to you how I shocked a room of pregnant women.
That was a classic Gunnar story. I'm sure we'll see more of those in the future.
Yeah, those people who know me would immediately agree, right? The term, as I said, Louise uses the term Gunnarish all the time. She just looks at people and says, just ignore him. Just ignore him. It's fine.
People love it. That EPA officer who wrote in, they're not the only person who's written to us saying how they like the dynamic. So, clearly whatever you're doing, Gunnar, it's working. So it's working for you, mate.
You have a good one, James.
You too, mate. See you later.
Bye.